This is a true story, but the names of the characters have been changed. Hi everyone. Today's story is about a man betrayed by his wife and best friend. Thinking he had it all, he discovers shocking secrets that force him to rebuild his life from scratch. Stay tuned to uncover the truth behind his shattered perfect life. I am Mark Thompson, a 34-year-old man living in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. I work in the tech industry, running a small startup company that I co-founded with my best friend, Jack. Together, we've built it up over nearly a decade, and to me, life feels complete, with family, career, and friends, all the things I deeply value and am proud of. Linda, my wife, is 31 years old. She's a strong, independent woman and a talented graphic designer. She's lively, cheerful, and absolutely loves creativity. We've been married for over 3 years, and ever since I met her, I knew I had found my true soulmate. I remember that first day we met at a small coffee shop near the office. Her soft brown curls and bright green eyes immediately drew me in. Linda wasn't just captivating but also witty and humorous. She made me laugh from the first conversation. We quickly realized there was a special bond between us, and from then on, we were inseparable. Linda became an irreplaceable part of my life, someone I always want by my side to share every joy and sorrow. Jack and I met back in college. We connected from the very first days of school. Jack, now 34, is easygoing, a bit outspoken, but incredibly reliable. He's been there for me during difficult times, not just as a close friend but as a brother. After graduation, we started our tech company, hoping to create something meaningful and proud. Jack and I spent countless sleepless nights working in a cramped, cluttered rented office, but we never gave up. Jack was always the one encouraging me when things got tough, and I know without him, our company wouldn't have reached the success it has today. Linda and Jack naturally became close friends as well. The relationship among the three of us wasn't just friendship but a bond one treasured deeply. We often gathered at my house, where cozy dinners had become a regular part of our weekly lives. Linda and Jack would joke around, sharing funny stories about work, life, and sometimes even hilarious college memories. Every conversation was filled with laughter, making the home feel warmer than ever. On weekends, we often planned small trips together. Sometimes it would be a short beach trip, other times a forest hike or a camping trip near the city. Linda was always thoughtful, preparing everything for the trip, from snacks and drinks to all the necessary items. Jack took on the role of planning the routes, choosing interesting destinations for the three of us to enjoy. I still remember the nights we'd sit around the campfire, sharing stories, stargazing, and feeling that life was truly meaningful when spent with trustworthy friends. During each trip, Linda and Jack were naturally comfortable and close. They could talk about anything without a hint of awkwardness, and I was happy that Linda had a friend who understood her so well. I never felt uneasy. Instead, I was always content to see how much they cared for each other. Linda and Jack seemed to share an unspoken understanding that I thought was rare, and it made me proud to have such genuine friends in my life. Watching them enjoy each other's company, I could sense that our friendship was something unique, beyond typical friendships. They were the people I could rely on, those I knew would always stand by me in any circumstance. Every time I saw Linda and Jack laughing together, I reminded myself of how lucky I was to have such a steadfast friendship and trust, a relationship I believed would always be a solid foundation in my life. I often felt incredibly fortunate to have both a wife like Linda and a close friend like Jack. To me, Linda was everything. I trusted her unconditionally, without a moment of doubt. Whenever Linda went out to meet friends or for work, I felt at ease because I knew she was loyal, completely dedicated to our family. She wasn't the type to be easily swayed by outside temptations. Instead, she always prioritized our family and had a special affection for me. The same went for Jack. He was the most trustworthy friend I had ever known. From our days as broke college students, Jack and I had endured countless hardships together. He knew me inside and out, understanding both my strengths and weaknesses, and he was always ready to lend a hand whenever I needed it. Those challenging startup years brought us close, allowing us to support each other in both work and life. With Jack, I felt I had a true brother in my life, someone I knew would never betray or hurt me. He always proved his loyalty and sincerity in every action. There were even times when, busy with work or away on business trips, I wouldn't hesitate to ask Jack to look after Linda. Once, I had to be away for a whole week, leaving Linda alone in the big house. I asked Jack to check on her, help her fix a few small things around the house, and he did it without hesitation, like a true brother. I was grateful to have a dependable friend like him, someone who genuinely cared about the small details in both mine and Linda's lives. Both Linda and Jack understood me and the value I placed in trust. That's why I never had the slightest doubt when I saw them close, laughing or talking together. On nights when they'd sit in the living room, joking or watching movies while I was busy working, it never made me uneasy. On the contrary, I felt reassured knowing my wife had a friend like Jack. They'd often attend social events or participate in charity activities together, as they both shared a passion for helping others. I felt not only proud but also happy to see that harmony between the two people I cherished most in my life. I truly believed I was one of the luckiest people to have both a soulmate and a loving wife. For me, Linda and Jack were not just individuals but essential parts of my life. Every time I thought about them, I was filled with gratitude for being able to share so many meaningful, unforgettable moments with the two people I respected most. My friendship with Jack was something I considered an inseparable part of myself. He wasn't just a friend, but someone who stood by me through hardships and successes alike. Together, we faced so many challenges, from the pressures of building a business to the achievements we were proud of. Jack was someone with whom I could share my deepest thoughts, someone who would listen and offer sincere advice, even when it wasn't easy to hear. He was like a mirror, reflecting back on me, a friend everyone would wish for in their life. With Linda, our relationship was a love I always treasured. She wasn't just my wife, she was my confidant, always by my side through every moment, both happy and difficult. Linda was a gentle and loving wife, but also a source of inspiration, encouraging me whenever I felt exhausted or lacked motivation. She had an understanding that went beyond words, sometimes just a look or a hug from her was enough to make everything feel lighter. Every day spent with them made me feel fortunate and rich. Linda and Jack were two people I trusted profoundly, the ones I'd dedicate my life to protect and share with. I truly couldn't imagine what life would be like without either of them. They had become an inseparable part of my world, a foundation upon which I built everything I held dear. Thinking of them filled me with warmth and peace. I often reminded myself that I had everything one could ask for in having a friend like Jack and a loving wife like Linda. Every moment, every memory with them was something I would always cherish. I once believed that this relationship was a testament to genuine love and steadfast trust, something rare that not everyone gets to experience in life. However, recently, I couldn't help but notice the subtle but strange changes in Linda's behavior. At first, these seemed like minor details, but gradually, they grew into an unsettling feeling inside me, one that I couldn't easily shake off. Linda began going out more frequently without giving any specific reason. In the past, she would always let me know if she was going out, even if it was just to meet friends or run a quick errand. But now, she would leave the house in a hurry, always clutching her phone tightly, and when I asked where she was going, she'd give a vague answer, as if she didn't want to explain. At home, Linda no longer seemed like herself. Our cozy evenings together felt different now. She would sit on the couch, staring at her phone or out the window. One time, I caught her texting someone quietly, always holding her phone at an angle where I couldn't see the screen. If I got close, she would quickly turn off the screen or slip her phone into her pocket. The feeling that something wasn't right kept growing inside me. Even the smallest details began to seem unusual. Linda no longer spent time talking with me or listening to me talk about my day as she used to. She also started dressing up more, choosing outfits she rarely wore before and sometimes buying new perfume. Every time her phone rang or a message came in, she reacted quickly, grabbing it and stepping out of the room, leaving me alone with a cascade of thoughts. The weight of doubt and confusion was getting heavier on my heart. Unable to bear this constant anxiety, I decided to confide in Jack, the person I had always considered a brother. One afternoon, after work, I invited Jack to our usual bar. This place had witnessed countless conversations between us since our college days, and as always, Jack had a way of calming me down. As I began to talk about the changes in Linda, my voice betrayed the worry I had been holding in. The strange signs, the sleepless nights, all of it spilled out during that conversation. Jack listened intently, occasionally nodding, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder like he always did whenever I was facing a tough time. After hearing everything, Jack smiled slightly and patted me on the back, saying that I might be overthinking it. He suggested that Linda could simply be stressed about work or dealing with something personal she hadn't yet shared. You know, sometimes women just need their own quiet space. There's nothing to worry about, it's just that we're not used to it, Jack reassured me, his voice filled with confidence. Linda loves you, and you both have a great marriage. Don't let these thoughts ruin your happiness. Jack's words eased my mind a bit, at least for that moment. He always knew how to make me feel like everything would be okay. I told myself that maybe I was indeed being too anxious, perhaps viewing everything through a negative lens. But when I returned home and saw Linda still keeping her distance, still avoiding my gaze, my heart grew heavy once more. I tried hard not to jump to the worst conclusions, but it was difficult to push those thoughts away completely. Every time I saw Linda glance at her phone and quickly hide it, every time she went out without telling me, a quiet worry stirred in me. It was a feeling of loss, a pain I couldn't quite describe. It was as if a part of my life was slowly slipping away, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. At night, after Linda had fallen asleep, I lay beside her, staring at the dark ceiling, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I wanted to believe Jack's words, to believe that there was nothing wrong, that it was all in my imagination. But deep down, the feeling of doubt lingered, like a shadow that refused to fade. We had once shared everything, but now I felt as if an invisible wall was slowly being built, separating me from the woman I loved most. One quiet afternoon, just like any other day, I was working in my office, completely unaware that my life was about to change forever. My phone buzzed, notifying me of a message from an unknown number. I opened it, initially intending to glance through quickly, but as I looked at the photos attached, my heart seemed to stop. I couldn't believe my eyes. In each of the photos were Linda and Jack, the two most important people in my life. Linda, the wife I loved and cherished, and Jack, the best friend I'd considered a brother. But the gestures, the looks they shared in those images were nothing like what I imagined friendship or ordinary closeness to be. Every subtle touch, every knowing smile between them conveyed a closeness far beyond what anyone could consider just friends. There was no need for explanations, I understood everything immediately. At that very moment, it felt as if my entire world had collapsed. I sat there, frozen, trying to take a deep breath, but my chest felt tight and heavy. My mind went blank as countless questions surfaced with no answers in sight. How could this happen? How could the wife I loved wholeheartedly and the friend I trusted completely keep something like this from me? All the memories we shared, from building our lives together to establishing our company, now felt empty and filled with bitterness. Each photo was like a wound to my heart, shattering everything I once believed in. I tried to suppress my emotions, telling myself that maybe this was just a misunderstanding, but the evidence staring back at me left no room for hope. In that moment, it felt as if I were falling into a bottomless pit with no end in sight. I realized that everything I had thought was solid was merely a fragile facade, and that facade had just been torn apart, leaving me with a pain I never anticipated having to endure. The sender of the message introduced herself as Kimmy. She claimed to know Linda and Jack's secret and proposed meeting me at a coffee shop. Each line of her message felt like a dagger twisting in my heart, leaving me hollow and weighed down. I didn't know how to process the emotions running through me, and for a brief moment, I thought about calling Linda and Jack right then to confront them. But instead of letting anger and emotions take control, I tried to stay calm. I knew I needed to understand everything clearly before taking action. Taking a deep breath, I replied to Kimmy, agreeing to meet her to clarify things. Inside, I felt a storm brewing, but on the surface, I forced myself to stay composed. I could already sense the enormous loss I was about to face, but I knew I had to be strong enough to confront the truth. We met in a quiet coffee shop on the corner, where the cozy atmosphere felt completely at odds with the turmoil inside me. Kimmy sat across from me, a beautiful, sharp-looking woman with a piercing gaze, though a hint of bitterness flickered in her eyes. She began to tell the story, and I listened, each word she spoke cutting deeper into my heart as it painted a painful reality. Kimmy admitted that she had pursued Jack for a long time. They had met several years ago, and Kimmy had hoped their relationship would eventually go further. However, Jack constantly turned her down, even coldly, showing no interest in the affection she held for him. This left Kimmy disappointed and frustrated, but she never fully let go of the hope that Jack would one day reciprocate her feelings. One day, while shopping at the mall, Kimmy unexpectedly saw Jack holding hands with a beautiful woman. They looked very close, exchanging glances like a couple completely smitten with each other. Kimmy felt jealousy surge within her, a feeling of betrayal despite never officially being with Jack. She discreetly took photos of them, driven by curiosity to find out who this woman was. After hiring a private investigator to follow and gather information on the mysterious woman, Kimmy uncovered an astonishing truth: the woman was Linda, Mark's wife, Jack's closest friend. Knowing that Linda was married, and married to the very man Jack always referred to as his best friend, Kimmy felt a level of outrage she could hardly contain. On one hand, she felt deceived by Jack, and on the other, she saw Linda as an interloper, the person who had captured Jack's attention, something Kimmy had always longed for. Kimmy didn't stop at just a few photos. Her jealousy and sense of betrayal pushed her to uncover everything, even if it meant taking extreme measures. After witnessing Jack and Linda's closeness at the mall, Kimmy knew she couldn't let it slide without answers. She decided to hire a professional investigation team, instructing them to monitor Jack and Linda's every move, from secret dates to time spent together at the office. Each time Jack and Linda met, whether in a coffee shop, a hotel, or even chatting privately at a park, the encounters were documented. The photos Kimmy gathered didn't just reveal a hidden relationship but showed an intimacy that crossed every line of acceptable friendship. Yet Kimmy wanted clearer evidence. She hired a cybersecurity expert to gain access to both Jack and Linda's phones. Every message, every call was captured and sent directly to her. She spared no expense to ensure that every piece of information from their phones was tightly monitored. Every night, Kimmy received a detailed report, including private messages exchanged between them. In these texts, she discovered something even more shocking: Jack and Linda were planning to sell sensitive company data and would frame Mark if their actions were discovered. As Kimmy recounted everything, I felt as if I were trapped in an unending nightmare. Each detail she revealed added to a brutal picture of betrayal that was impossible to forgive. Sitting there, my hands trembled as I took the stack of evidence from Kimmy: messages, photos, and conversations exchanged between Jack and Linda. Each message I read, every line I saw, added to the ache in my heart. Not only had they deceived me emotionally, but they had concocted a calculated plan to exploit the trust and sincerity I had shown them, all to profit from the very company Jack and I had built from the ground up. I sat there, staring at the texts as if each word were a blade twisting into me. Every memory, every moment I had once thought sincere, now appeared to be nothing more than a mask for their schemes and ambitions. My friendship with Jack, my bond with Linda, everything I valued most, now lay in pieces, irreparably shattered. They had used my trust, not only to betray me emotionally but also to manipulate and undermine the work I had poured my heart into. I looked at Kimmy, feeling as if everything around me was spinning, blurred in the cold light of the truth. What I once believed to be the solid foundation of my life now appeared to be a fragile shell, torn open to reveal an unexpectedly bitter reality. I was standing on the edge, faced with the harsh line between trust and a truth too painful to bear, and I knew I couldn't turn back, couldn't pretend that everything was okay. Kimmy had presented me with an undeniable reality, and from that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. All I could do now was accept the truth, no matter how much it hurt, and prepare to confront those who had destroyed the trust and life I once believed would last forever. Knowing the extent of Jack and Linda's scheme, I felt I couldn't let them continue this deception any longer. Despite the pain and disappointment I felt, I knew I had to act with a clear head, taking one careful step at a time to ensure the truth would be exposed undeniably. First, I spent time meticulously preparing every detail of my plan. I replaced all critical documents in the company with dummy files, down to every number and graph. These files looked identical to the originals but contained meaningless data. I wanted to be sure that if Jack and Linda tried to steal these files, they'd end up with nothing of value. This was the first step in weakening their plan, and I reminded myself that every part of this needed to be carried out with absolute caution. Next, I discreetly set up cameras in the office, a task that required keeping everything as inconspicuous as possible. I knew that even the smallest misstep could alert Jack and Linda and cause them to be on guard. To maintain secrecy, I studied every corner of the room, finding spots that would be overlooked but still allow clear recordings of all their actions. The cameras were positioned in the most inconspicuous places, one cleverly hidden inside a plant in the corner, another tucked on top of a file shelf, blending seamlessly into the office. I tested each camera from different angles to ensure that no detail would be missed, yet the setup would still appear completely natural. Each camera was remotely activated, programmed to start recording only when someone tampered with the filing cabinet or accessed confidential company files. I wanted to make sure every move was recorded clearly, giving them no chance to deny or explain away their actions. I silently checked the devices, making sure the quality of both video and audio would be irrefutable when the time came. Everything was calculated down to the smallest detail. All I needed was one slip-up from them, one attempt to steal files, and everything would be captured in a way they couldn't dispute. Inside, I felt a mix of cold determination and anticipation. Every step I took was a path toward reclaiming the justice and truth I deserved. From that point on, I quietly monitored them. Each time I entered the office, I kept a calm expression, giving no hint that I knew anything. I continued working alongside Jack, chatting with him as if nothing had happened, and Linda suspected nothing either. But beneath the surface, I was always ready, waiting for the moment when the cameras would capture enough evidence to reveal the full scope of their scheme. During this time, I maintained my usual demeanor, carrying on with work as if everything were normal. Linda also remained oblivious, as I treated her with a surprising calm. Each day felt like a test of patience, each moment a step closer to the truth. I just needed one careless slip, one boundary-crossing action from them to solidify my case. And then, the opportunity one had been waiting for arrived. One afternoon, I saw Jack and Linda enter my office, a secretive look in their eyes as they glanced around, ensuring no one was watching. Through the security cameras, I observed their every movement as they opened the file cabinet, rifling through documents. A surge of mixed pain and anger welled up inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm, knowing that each passing second was bringing me closer to uncovering the full truth. Finally, with enough evidence in hand, I knew it was time for the next step in my plan. I didn't just want to expose their betrayal, I wanted them to face the full consequences of their actions. What I was about to do wasn't merely about revealing a truth, it was about reclaiming the honor and trust they had trampled upon. That evening, I invited both Linda and Jack to dinner at my home, keeping my demeanor as normal as possible, as if nothing had happened. I even poured wine for the three of us, creating a relaxed atmosphere to keep their suspicions at bay. After a few glasses, I pretended to be tipsy, wishing them a good evening and excusing myself to go to bed early. I knew that once they thought I was out of sight and unaware, they would lower their guard and reveal their true selves. When the moment I had planned for came, I quietly got up and left the room, leaving Linda and Jack alone in the living room. I made my way upstairs, stopping just around the corner, watching from a hidden vantage point, waiting for the inevitable. Just as I had anticipated, within moments, Linda and Jack began to relax, their conversation becoming more intimate, with gestures and looks that went beyond the limits of friendship. Small laughs and gentle touches flowed freely, with none of the usual restraint. Watching this scene unfold, my heart clenched painfully, but I kept my composure, waiting for the perfect moment. When things became unmistakably clear, I stepped into the living room. My unexpected appearance startled them both, and they quickly pulled apart, awkward smiles and nervous laughter filling the silence. Jack, flustered, hastily claimed that they had just had a bit too much to drink, that they hadn't been in control of their actions. Linda nodded quickly, stumbling over her words, trying to brush it off as a small lapse of judgment. They both tried to apologize, urging me to believe it was nothing more than a wine-induced mishap, hoping to convince me that we could just move past it. I stood still, silently looking at both of them, saying nothing. Inside, I felt nothing for their hollow apologies. Their words didn't ease the disappointment or hurt, they only solidified my understanding that these apologies were nothing more than a flimsy cover for what had truly happened behind my back. I didn't need to say anything, my silence and my gaze were enough for them to realize there was no hiding from the truth. Linda and Jack gradually understood that their excuses weren't going to sway me. Their flustered attempts at justification lost all meaning, and they grew visibly uneasy, eyes darting as if searching for an escape. But at that moment, I left them no way out. I had seen enough to know that the trust and affection I had given them both had been deeply betrayed, and no amount of justification could change that fact. Without a word, I quietly pulled out the file of evidence Kimmy had gathered, laying it out on the table before them. As they took in the undeniable photos and messages, their expressions shifted. Jack even let out a slight smirk, a look of confidence creeping across his face. He leaned back, crossing his arms, radiating an air of smug certainty. Linda was no different, her eyes showing a satisfaction I had never seen before. They thought I would never dare make the truth public, believing they still held power over me. The confidential documents they had stolen, what they thought would keep me silent, had now become the very leverage they believed would save them. With a smirk, Jack spoke in a confident tone, implying that if I tried to escalate the matter, he and Linda would have no hesitation in releasing damaging information to hurt my reputation and the company. They were convinced I would stay silent, that I would fear the potential fallout. At that moment, I realized they had no idea that everything had already been within my control from the beginning. Keeping my gaze steady, without a hint of hesitation, I calmly responded, "Do you really think you can use those documents to blackmail me?" Jack and Linda's faces showed a flicker of confusion as they registered my composure in the face of their threats. They didn't realize that I had replaced the genuine files long ago, leaving them with worthless copies. I had known every detail of their plan, prepared for every possibility, and was ready to counter every move they made. The next day, I arrived at the company early and quietly backed up all the documents, recordings, and messages I had collected onto multiple devices. For me, exposing Linda and Jack was not only about unmasking them but also about protecting myself from any potential repercussions. I wanted to make sure there were no gaps in my plan and that they'd have no chance to twist the truth. To reinforce my position, I sent a copy of the evidence to my personal lawyer, accompanied by detailed instructions about the situation. I needed to ensure that if things didn't go according to plan, I would still have a way to make the truth public and avoid any legal risks. I also stored all the evidence in a secure email account, with a password known only to me. In an important shareholder meeting soon after, I decided to reveal everything. In front of the board of directors, I began presenting their scheme, showing each detail and piece of evidence on the large screen in the conference room. I displayed video clips showing Jack and Linda secretly copying documents, their suggestive messages to each other, and finally, the undeniable intimate photos. The silence in the room was suffocating. The board members stared at the screen, then shifted their gaze to Jack and Linda, their faces a mix of shock and anger. Jack made an awkward attempt to explain, but no one wanted to hear any excuses. Linda kept her head down, seemingly unable to meet the eyes of those who had once trusted her. My plan didn't end with exposing them internally at the company. I wanted them to be accountable to the public as well. After the intense board meeting, where all their misconduct was laid bare, I decided not to let this matter fade into obscurity. I knew I needed to make the truth accessible so everyone could see their true nature, preventing them from easily escaping or concealing their actions. Immediately after leaving the meeting room, I had the evidence uploaded to a major social media platform, where it would quickly reach a wide audience. I posted the photos, videos, and messages that clearly illustrated the extent of their betrayal and scheming. There was little need for commentary, the evidence spoke for itself. Within hours, the post gained thousands of views, shares, and comments from people who had never known them personally. Strangers were stunned and outraged by Jack and Linda's deception. Each comment, each criticism poured over them like a tidal wave. People who had once worked with them, those who had admired Jack or liked Linda, couldn't hide their disappointment. They expressed shock upon learning the truth, feeling deceived by individuals they had once respected and supported. Their betrayal quickly became a topic of widespread discussion, and I knew that from now on, the carefully constructed image Jack and Linda had built over the years was completely shattered. Bringing the truth to light allowed me to regain a sense of justice, though I also understood that from this moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. The friendship we once shared, the peaceful family life we once had, all of it was now just a memory. But I knew that sometimes the truth needs to be revealed so that others don't suffer the same fate. For Jack and Linda, this was likely an unforeseen consequence of their betrayal, a price they would never have anticipated. After the truth came to light, I knew there was no reason to delay any longer. I promptly began the divorce proceedings with Linda, ending a marriage I once believed was built on strength and sincerity. The betrayal had left a deep wound, and I knew I couldn't continue in a relationship where trust no longer existed. On the day of the divorce hearing, I felt a weight in my chest but maintained a calm and resolute demeanor. Linda sat across from me in the courtroom, her eyes weary and seemingly remorseful, but I couldn't sense any real sincerity. She tried to talk to me before the proceedings began, but I looked straight ahead, refusing to let emotions cloud my judgment. For me, this wasn't the time for discussion or explanations. Everything was already far too clear and beyond repair. As the hearing proceeded, our lawyers went through the formalities, and everything moved along rather swiftly. Linda looked down, unable to hide her disappointment and sense of helplessness. At one point, she glanced over at me as if she wanted to say something, but I no longer had any interest in listening. I reminded myself that whatever feelings I once had for Linda were now nothing more than a part of the past. To my surprise, when the court addressed the division of assets in other terms, Linda initially seemed inclined to argue. However, after seeing the unwavering determination in my eyes, she fell silent, accepting all the terms proposed by my lawyer. I realized that Linda also understood that this was the price she had to pay for her actions, and whether she wanted to or not, she had no choice but to face the consequences. When the hearing concluded, I walked out of the courtroom feeling both relieved and saddened. Linda stayed back, not approaching, just watching me with an empty expression. We once shared beautiful memories, but now, all that remained were fragmented recollections tainted by betrayal. I knew I had made the right decision, a decisive and honest choice, so that from here on, I could start anew, free from the lies I never deserved to endure. As the leader of the company, I couldn't allow betrayal to exist within the environment I had built. I planned a final meeting with both of them at the office, where they would have to face the reality of their actions. Jack arrived first, looking somewhat apprehensive but trying to keep his composure. Shortly after, Linda walked in, appearing tired and lacking confidence. I looked at them, two people I had once trusted completely, yet now all I felt was profound disappointment. Once they were seated, I spoke plainly, without any need for embellishment. Your positions in this company are terminated as of today. Jack looked at me, appearing surprised, but rather than protest, he simply stayed silent, as if trying to absorb the reality. Linda lowered her head, her gaze wavering as if she still held a small hope I might change my mind. But I remained firm. This wasn't just a personal matter, it was a core principle I needed to uphold within the company. Everyone here had to understand that honesty and trust were non-negotiable. I handed them the formal termination documents and requested their signatures. Jack took the pen, hesitating slightly before signing his name without saying a word. Linda's hand trembled slightly, her eyes drifting toward me as if seeking some sign of forgiveness, but I merely watched her, unmoved. I knew that the only way to protect myself and the company was to stay resolute. Once they had signed, I instructed them to gather their personal belongings and leave the premises immediately. I didn't want them lingering for even a moment longer, disturbing the environment that I and the team had worked so hard to build. As I watched them leave, I felt a sense of peace, though tinged with a bit of emptiness. Dismissing them wasn't merely a strict action, it was my way of affirming that there was no place for betrayal or deceit in this company. When they finally exited the office, I knew I had taken the last step in closing a painful chapter in my life. Now, I could focus on rebuilding the company, creating an environment where honesty and trust formed the foundation of every relationship. After everything came to light, Linda and Jack fell from the peak of success to the depths of despair, losing everything they once held dear. Previously admired by colleagues and confidently progressing in their careers, now all of that was just a distant memory. The jobs they had considered the foundation of their lives and careers were gone, and the reputations they had spent years building collapsed in an instant. Those who once trusted and respected them now turned their backs, offering not a shred of respect. Linda, once a confident and lively woman, now felt the cold indifference and distance from everyone around her. Every time she entered a coffee shop or walked down the street, the glances and whispers behind her back robbed her of any comfort she once felt. Old acquaintances would avert their eyes when they saw Linda or, if forced to greet her, offer only brief, uncomfortable exchanges. The feeling of no longer belonging to the community she once took pride in became increasingly unbearable. Even her closest friends gradually distanced themselves. No one wanted to invite Linda out or include her in weekend gatherings anymore. Messages and calls from friends grew sparse, and invitations to social events dried up. Linda started to realize she had been pushed out of the social circle she once belonged to, leaving her feeling incredibly isolated. Every night, Linda found herself alone at home, faced with empty walls and an overwhelming silence. Jack, too, faced his own struggles. Once respected and the center of attention at meetings with clients and colleagues, he now found people ignoring him or even turning away in public. Business partners who had once been close to him gradually withdrew, with no one willing to work with someone branded a deceiver and traitor. Jack had taken pride in the relationships he'd cultivated, but now he understood that all of it was gone. No one trusted him or wanted to maintain any connection. Even strangers cast critical glances at Linda and Jack. They overheard comments from former employees or others who knew their story, subtle yet heavy with judgment. Sometimes, they'd find themselves the subject of conversation in cafes, where people recounted their story of betrayal as a cautionary tale. Now, Linda and Jack were left with only each other, with no one to confide in or lean on. They realized that trust and respect from others aren't easily regained. The relationships that once supported them had become vast voids in their lives, leaving them with a hollow, lonely feeling they had no way to fill. Stepping away from the pain of the past, I realized that rebuilding my life would be a long journey, filled with challenges but also brimming with hope. First, I started by taking a deeper look at myself, something I had neglected for so long while caught up in work and relationships. I asked myself what I truly wanted and what held genuine meaning for me. From there, I began planning my days and weeks more purposefully, focusing on cultivating a positive outlook and dedicating myself to activities that would help me grow. I returned to the positive habits I had once loved but forgotten. Each morning, I woke up early, went for a run around the park near my home, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the energy from nature. Taking time for myself, whether it was simply reading a good book or joining a new class, helped me understand that I deserve moments of peace and joy. I also signed up for personal development workshops and classes, expanding my knowledge in areas I previously hadn't had the chance to explore. These steps not only helped me grow but also made me feel stronger and more self-assured each day. As the days passed, I realized that the betrayal I had experienced had taught me many valuable lessons. I learned that not everyone deserves my trust, and that only genuine honesty and sincerity can build lasting relationships. Instead of harboring resentment, I chose to take away lessons that would help me in the future. Now, I can better distinguish between those who truly value me and relationships that only exist on the surface. I understood that love and trust are precious values, and I would only give them to those who genuinely deserve them. While there were moments of loneliness, I knew I was on the right path. I began meeting new people and opening myself up to creating healthier relationships. Friends and family, those who truly care for me, were always there, supporting and encouraging me throughout this journey. Thanks to them, I never felt completely alone. Genuine conversations and light-hearted gatherings gradually restored my faith in friendship and love. Looking toward the future, I know I can create a better life, one I can be proud of. No longer weighed down by past hurts, I feel wiser and stronger. With self-respect and trust in myself, I will never let past sorrow affect my present happiness. Every day is a new beginning, an opportunity to get closer to the best version of myself. And now, I am fully ready to embrace the good things waiting ahead.